There's not that many when we start. By the time we get here and to the end, many people join, many new faces, many people are interested in what we're saying, and they come and they join and they believe in the same message that we believe in, which is a beautiful thing, because all we are spreading is positivity, is justice, is peace and liberation. And anybody that opposes that, unlucky. As I always say, either get on board or get out of the way, because we're just getting started. I'm here at 6 o'clock at the Cardiff Community Centre. Some of the speakers have joined us now on this march, so they're going to give a few words. First, I'd like to invite Dr. David Miller. Yeah. And then we've also got Sister Batul as well, who will speak after him. So a round of applause for David Miller.
Okay. My name's David Miller. I used to be the Professor of Political Sociology at the University of Bristol. Then, after I talked about Zionism and Islamophobia, they sacked me in October 2021. I took them to the Industrial Tribunal starting on the 16th of October last year, 9 days after the launch of Al-Aqsa Flood. And I won at my tribunal. The university had wrongly dismissed me, so that was good. But the most important part of the case was that the court determined I wasn't sacked for being rude to students, which is what the university said. I was sacked for being an anti-Zionist and expressing anti-Zionist views. And most importantly, the court determined that anti-Zionist views were worthy of respect in a democratic society and will be protected under the Equality Act henceforth. So no more do we listen to the Zionists when they say anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. Anti-Zionism is not racism, it is an anti-racist philosophy which believes in the ending of racism, which of course means the ending of Zionism. Zionism is an irreducibly, fundamentally racist philosophy. It always has been and it always will be. It cannot be reformed, it has to be dismantled. As you said in the march today, brick by brick. So I'm going to say a couple more things. The first thing to say is that we're doing a talk this evening, and I want to say where it is. At Catay's Park, Catay's Community Centre, along with Comrade Batul and Isabel Stanley and Huda Amori from the ever fantastic Palestine Action. But I wanted to close by talking about the unbelievable scenes we have seen in the last 2 or 3 weeks, all across the US of A, starting on the 17th at Columbia University in the Upper West Side of New York. There are now occupations in hundreds of US universities. There are occupations all across the world, in Australia, New Zealand, across Europe. In this country there are occupations. Now about 10, I think there's one at Swansea University, is there not? And we sort of feel like we're having a global uprising for Palestine. And I was wondering, is there a word in Arabic? Is there a word in Arabic which could describe that? Intifada is the word. Intifada is a word for revolution, for uprising, for ending Zionism. It's not a word of hate, it's a word of change, of hope and promise for the future. And when you chant on this demonstration that resistance is justified, well, of course, it's justified not just morally, but in international law. The right of armed resistance to occupation is allowed under international law, in fact, is a duty. And so, regardless of what the law in this country might say about specific organisations, resistance remains justified and cannot be made illegal regardless of whatever the police or the Home Office or Rishi Sunak or Michael Gove might say.
Resistance is justified!
Resistance is justified!
Resistance is justified!
Resistance is justified!
And so at the ending I want to say my talk tonight will be all about the Zionist movement and what the Zionist movement is, and the way in which the Zionist movement didn't just stop in 1948 when they created the apartheid state of Israel. It continued, and it is organised all across the world in more than 100 countries. And it's not just in Palestine that Zionism needs to be dismantled. It's in this country, in the US, in France, in Germany, and every other country where the racist philosophy of Zionism flourishes. Every single Zionist organisation must either disaffiliate from Zionism or be ended. Every single one. So I would like to hear a chant at the end here of End Zionism. End Zionism. End Zionism. End Zionism. End Zionism. Thank you.
All right, next up, please all. Next up, please welcome Sister Batul El-Sabaiti. Yes, who's come all the way from London today. She's going to be at the event later. Again, if you haven't got your tickets, you can turn up and buy them at the door. Please, it's going to be a very, very good event. So make some noise for Sister Batul.
Peace be with you all. Let's start with a few chants. When I chant, you'll say, "We will free Palestine." I swear by the kids they've terrorized.
We will free Palestine.
For every mother's enduring cry.
We will free Palestine.
For all the babies born alive.
We will free Palestine.
For every father's sacrifice.
We will free Palestine.
For every widow's teary eyes.
We will free Palestine.
For every journalist's blood spilt in broad daylight.
We will free Palestine.
The martyrs' blood is freedom's price.
We will free Palestine.
For the house of God they've set alight.
We will free Palestine.
For the martyrs' funerals they sought to defile.
We will free Palestine.
We will march for Palestine with our heads held high.
We will free Palestine.
We will march for Palestine with our heads held high.
We will free Palestine.
Not faced by threats, we stand upright.
We will free Palestine.
Flying the flag for Palestine day and night.
We will free Palestine.
We expose the colonizer who seeks to dehumanize.
We will free Palestine.
The Intifada generation will lead to liberation.
We will free Palestine.
The Intifada generation will lead to liberation.
We will free Palestine.
The Intifada generation will lead to liberation.
We will free Palestine.
The human being on this earth is responsible to some degree, whether we like it or not, for what is happening in the world. The human being every day needs to look at themselves in the mirror and ask the question, am I standing on the right side or am I standing on the wrong side of history? Are my interests superseding the core and human principles? Or are my interests in line with these core human principles? See, prior to October the 7th, we weren't aware of the extent to which our ministries and our institutions and our centres were cooperating and were funding and were financing this killing machine that we are witnessing in Gaza. We were unaware of the extent to which our own taxpayers' money is being used to fund this killing machine. We were unaware of the extent to which we were living in the literal belly of the beast. We are living in an entity that is an accomplice in this genocide that we are witnessing. So where are the values and the principles that we sing about day and night? Where is the human right to life and freedom from destruction that we're witnessing in Gaza? This entity has managed to kill over 40,000 Palestinians in broad daylight, 70% women and children, before the eyes of the world, and it's not been stopped. If anything, the American, the British, the German and the European bombs continue to rain on the people of Gaza. Shame on America! Shame on Britain! Shame on America! Shame on Britain! It's high time we expose the hypocrisy of this idea of democracy and double standards. Haven't we seen all that has happened? The mainstream media will come to us and tell us, oh, the Gazan resistance is taking the collective people of Palestine as human shields, right? That's the most common thing we've heard since October the 7th. Well, okay. Has the Israeli occupation entity spared a single square meter of Gaza from bombing, from carpet bombing, from schools to hospitals to shelters? What does this tell us about the savage nature of the occupation entity? Can anything be justified under the guise of human shield? 70% women and children from the 40,000 killed. But it goes to the extent that on October the 7th, journalists have found out that the Israeli occupation entity killed several of its own Israeli citizens. What does this tell us? What does this tell us about the reality of the occupation entity? It tells us that it has absolutely no precision. Like it drinks water, it kills. It's used to mass killing. That's all it knows how to do. Its margin of error when it strikes is in the percentage of the thousands. Does this tell us that they're really after the Gazan resistance? Or are they after the collective people of Palestine? Palestine in its entirety is an enemy of the Israeli occupation entity, and that makes sense because it was erected on the ruins of the ethnically cleansed Palestinian people. As Golda Meir put it, the legendary Golda Meir of the Israeli occupation entity put it, she said, the good Palestinian is the dead Palestinian. Shame on colonialism! Shame on the Israeli occupation entity! Shame on America! Shame on Britain! On this topic of double standards, the West took a great look at the Iranian missiles that struck terror in the heart of the occupation entity. Did the West look at the way in which the Israeli occupation entity attacked the sovereignty of Iran? Did they bat an eyelid? Was there a single condemnation that came out of the West in terms of the way that Iran's sovereignty was being jeopardized and targeted? No. Why is it that when the West supports an entity, they become so absolutely blind in their support that they disregard everything else? The reality is that the Western establishments and their tentacles through the mass media have taken us all as fools. They've taken us as a laughing stock. They've been lying to us the whole time. They've been covering the truths from us the whole time. They've been getting us so caught up and stuck in the small details and the small headlines and the small side issues. That is the reality of Western democracy. It is hypocrisy. If the blood of Gaza has given us anything, if the pure blood of Gaza has given us any gift, it is that it has removed those masks of deception and it has exposed the realities before the eyes of the world. This is how the mass media works, despite the fact that we can see the genocide in broad daylight. We can see it through social media. The mainstream media still won't call things by their name. The mainstream media will still show us the things that suit the Western interests and higher elite establishment, and will turn a blind eye against the real issues that are transpiring on the ground, no matter how true it is. They make the small issues big and the big issues small. And what happens when democracy, when Western democracy is truly touched? What happens when the interests of the Western democracy is hurt? It becomes wild. That is the reality. That's what we've seen before us in America with these students. For the longest time, it's been very difficult to prove that democracy is hypocrisy. This idea that democracy is built on lies fell on deaf ears. For the longest time, the Zionist lobby, with its billions of dollars and its machinations, has reigned supreme. It took 40,000 killings in Gaza, the massacring of 40,000, the magnitude of blood that was given on the ground to expose those realities before us. Look at what's happening in America to the students that are rising up. Look at what happens to democracy when it feels threatened, when Western interests become threatened. When I say democracy is threatened, it's because there is no democracy. If it's shown us absolutely anything, it is this idea that democracy this whole time has been sold to us as a complete lie. We live in a system that is governed by the transnational capitalist class. That 1% that owns that 99%. Shame on the capitalist system. Shame on America. Shame on Britain. For the longest time, the mass media and our colonized institutions have sought to divide the nations. They've sought to divide the North and the South. They've sought to divide the East and the West. Ask yourself why the people of the East and the people of the global South hate the West so much. Maybe it has to do with the inhumane practices of the West, from colonization to occupations to the imposition of dictators. But the reality is, these truths never really reached the ears of the people of the West. It was always twisted in the reality that it reached us. We were fed these slogans and these ideas that Muslims are inherently prone to terrorism, so somehow it is justifiable. Somehow these invasions and occupations are justifiable in the face of these savage individuals that we want to impose our democracy on. The reality is, it took this much blood in Gaza for the world to reverberate and the world to wake up. What does this tell us? It tells us that we are the majority. It tells us that we are the majority. Billions globally are calling for the freedom of Palestine. The majority of the world are Palestinians, in our thousands, in our millions.
We are all Palestinians.
In our thousands, in our millions.
We are all Palestinians.
In our thousands, in our millions.
We are all Palestinians.
The free people of the world have no choice in front of them but to speak up, but to raise their voices. What happens if we are silent? If we are silent, it means that we have set the precedent for human rights and the boundaries of human rights to be violated in every situation and in every single circumstance. And so we are at a direct threat. We are at a direct threat in the situations that we face in the West today, because if they can do that in Gaza, they can do that here. That is the reality. So whether we like it or not, we have to speak up. We have to speak up about the transgressions against the violation of the most basic of human rights. And it's important, and I'll end with this, it's important that we understand the significance of what is happening on the ground in Gaza today. Despite all of the death and the mayhem and the destruction that we see, the Israeli occupation entity is dealing decisive blows. When we look at the situation in 1967, we see that the Israeli occupation entity succeeded in colonizing Gaza, the West Bank, East Jerusalem, the Sinai Peninsula, the Golan Heights. It was expanding. By 1982, the Israeli occupation entity invaded Lebanon. Today, 7 months later, the Israeli occupation entity cannot even recapture Gaza. It cannot even recapture 350 square kilometers. What does this tell us? This tells us that the Israeli occupation entity, through October the 7th, was exposed as a fragile entity. This idea that an invincible army has been completely shattered. its military, its intelligence, its security, its geographic, its demographic vulnerability has been shown before the whole world at the hands of this resistance axis that is united and that is coordinated and that considers an attack on one as an attack on all. This is very important for us to understand. The Israeli occupation entity today is facing an existential crisis. It is fighting a war of survival. So as much as possible, we need to understand what is happening on the ground. Victory to the resistance! Victory to
No resistance!
victory to
No resistance!
Thank you very much.